CIA, Andrew, so guy calls me. He says, Pat, I'm being offered to be part of CIA to give intel, okay? He's in a niche industry that a lot of people have access to him, and he meets a lot of people. Think money, finance, you're in front of a lot of different interesting people. Why is that appealing to somebody like him to say, yes, I want to do this job, versus what is the risk for him to say, never, ever work with the CIA, even if they're trying to use you for a project like that?
U.S. citizen, right?
U.S. citizen.
So this is, it's such a hard question, because even when we're at CIA and we're briefed on these operations, it's really hard to understand why the fuck somebody would say yes. It's so nonsensical to say yes to be an American citizen that works for the CIA, that supports as an asset the CIA, because the bureaucracy is horrible when you're a badged officer of CIA, a blue badged officer. It's even worse when you're a U.S. citizen that's encrypted, that's under layers of confidentiality and compartmentalization. But people say yes, and there's two big reasons why people say yes. One, they truly believe in helping America. Like legit, real blue blood, red blood Americans. And they do it a lot, Pat. It's fucking amazing. Because if CIA were to call me, the only reason I would say yes is because I worked for them in the past. But if I was a $100 million business owner and CIA said they want me to report, I'd be like, no. How are you guys going to keep my information safe? How are you going to keep my business safe? I've spent my whole life building this thing for you guys to piss away in one bad phone call. But they say yes. They say yes, and then oftentimes what ends up happening is the average lifespan for a CIA asset is about 5 years. We say that's their useful reporting life, not their physical life, because within 5 years, CIA fucks up somehow. They leak their information, they don't brief the right office, and then an internal investigation takes suit, and some FBI person barges through your office door and arrests you on suspicion of working with Russians. And then it's not until you get into an interrogation room where you're like, I'm only talking to the Russians because CIA's paying me to talk to the Russians. And then that whole fucking debacle blows up, and it's a mess. It's a mess because government compartmentalizes so heavily. The second reason why people do it is because they believe CIA is going to help them somehow. Help them close a deal, help them get intel, help them get something on their computer.
That's the last thing you would think about. If
and
you're going to do it.
They're never going to do it.
Okay, but let's go with that. Where am I going with this? So you think about stories like an Epstein, okay? So, when I say intel, of course, I think CIA. But you have Mossad, you have MI6, you talk highly of India, I think, with India's intelligence. I've never heard about India. So you're starting to really speak, where you're bringing some attention to it. But if a person like an Epstein, okay, where you hear stories about this guy on what things he's been involved with, you go back history at this point, people know that him and Bill Barr went to a school together. I don't know if you knew this or not. They went to school together many, many years ago as kids. And then one of the people from that school is who later on came back and brought Jeffrey Epstein to be a math teacher, even though he didn't have the degree for it, and he kind of grows up to be who he is today. But the story with how he made his money, how he got his connection, his tie to Robert Maxwell, Robert Maxwell's tie back to Mossad, Ghislaine Maxwell, who was trained by her father, and Robert Maxwell being a big media mogul person. Does a person like Epstein leverage his intel relationship with Mossad to get things from either Mossad or the individuals as a form of a threat and a leverage that's different than a CIA coming to somebody in America saying, we'd like to be an asset to help us out getting information? How different is an Epstein versus what happens here?
In methodology, it's not that different. And it's not that different. You have an intelligence agency that knows there's a source of information from an individual, and then they just need to find what they can use to reciprocate that cooperation from the targeted individual. So the methodology is not that different. I would, and I still do, openly say the most likely intelligence connection that Jeffrey Epstein had was with Mossad. Most likely. If he was an intelligence asset, it was probably for Mossad, not for CIA. He's too much of a high risk for CIA. And what he would have wanted is something Mossad would have been able to supply him with, where the CIA couldn't. Whether that's sex trafficking or something else, Mossad is way more flexible in what they're willing to bring to the table in terms of an intelligence operation, other than CIA.
So tell me more when you use the word flexible.
So Mossad openly assassinates. CIA does not openly assassinate. Israel and Mossad openly advocate for regime change. CIA does not do that. And then the permissions, the authorities that kind of, for a lack of a better word, handcuff CIA, those authorities don't really exist for Mossad. Mossad is essentially the modern day version of the 1960s era CIA. Very experimental, very flexible, very little oversight, because they're surrounded by an ocean of threats. Whereas, the United States is surrounded by literal ocean, and Canada and Mexico. So we have different threat portfolios, profiles, and the difference in that threat profile is what informs our willingness to take high-risk actions.
So it's interesting when you say, so are you saying back in the 60s, we were as reckless and aggressive in getting intel as the current Mossad is?
And we were as reckless without being as well-trained, well-funded, or well-technologically equipped.
Give me an example of how reckless we were.
MX Ultra.
Okay.
Operation Midnight Climax. I mean, we were actively drugging Americans and then putting them in brothels with American prostitutes to test mind control agents. That's some reckless shit. Trying to get Castro's beard to fall off his face, the whole Bay of Pigs. I mean, that's the kind of shit that CIA still can't get off its back because it was so dumb, reckless, and ill-informed.
Do you think that gives a country an edge if they're willing to be more reckless than you in gathering intel and you're trying to be more proper than them?
Just take it out of the intel world and put it on the fucking school playground, right? Which bully is likely to not get muscled around? The one that will go crazy when you approach him, or the one who's trying to play by the rules?
No question about it. The
no
reckless
question.
one, yeah.
And that's exactly why it works.
Who knows this?
All of the Five Eyes being the 5 Western intelligence agencies that cooperate the closest, Canada, America, UK, Australia, New Zealand, all of the Five Eyes know Mossad is the most risk tolerant and most aggressive of intelligence agencies. And then we also know that because of that recklessness, there's only so much we can do to reel them in. They're so reckless, Pat, they collect on us. Mossad actively tries to penetrate CIA, actively tries to penetrate
I wouldn't be surprised
MI6, ASIS, yeah.
Yeah, when John was here, John Kiriakou said every time they would come around to us, he says, we never trusted Mossad because they would come in, they would give gifts, and we're like, what are you doing giving us gifts? We don't need gifts. You're going to put some record. We'd find it. We're like, what are you doing? I can tell you want to hear my conversation. What experiences did you have with the Mossad yourself?
So I was lucky to only have a few experiences because the types of operations I worked on were more sensitive than they were willing to expose to Mossad. In my senior years, in my years as a middle manager, if you will, that's when I had the most overlap with joint operations with Mossad. Always super professional, always very smart, always quiet in the room, always impeccably dressed, and always shockingly good looking, especially if they were cooperating in an operation with the US, because they know our MO. They know that a beautiful man or a beautiful woman is going to distract us from better judgment. And that's one of the things that we're briefed on before we operate with Mossad. We're like, hey, just expect a bombshell to walk in and expect that they put that bombshell there for a reason.
It's basic principles.
Basic principles. And that's how they work. That's why they're so good, because they can literally leverage what we call primal instincts. Primal instincts in human beings, they surpass your religious beliefs, they surpass your education level, your age, these primal incentives that they know how to kind of set the dominoes up in place to maximize your cooperation, unless you come in defensive.
So let's go back to it. So let's talk about the recklessness you're saying of Mossad, that they're willing to go to levels that, U.S. is not willing to go. We used to back in the 60s, no longer. What event prevented us from being as reckless? Is it because somebody came in and they're like, well, moving forward, the CIA is going to be a very responsible intel agency and we're going to tell everything to America? Or no, after the 60s, you got Martin Luther King, you got John F. Kennedy, you got Bobby Kennedy, you got all this stuff that happened. Their reputation dropped. Let's find a way to fix this. What was the reasoning why we went more safer than being reckless?
September 11th, 2001.
So not even 60. So you coming straight to 01.
01. When CIA and FBI failed to collaborate effectively to prevent 9/11, when that happened, the Congress stepped in and created heavy oversight for both intelligence agencies. The 9/11 Commission that was completed in 2003 basically outlined how the intelligence agencies were forced to cooperate, forced to grow, how their budget and their operations were going to be strictly pursued and overseen by a group in the Congress, and how everything would have to get briefed up through the executive branch. That transformed CIA.
So they finally had oversight. So prior to that, what was oversight?
The president controls CIA. That's
always. It's always been the case.
That's the executive branch.
But what else? Did they have another dotted line to somebody else after 01?
They had a slight, after 01, they had dotted lines to multiple people. So they were still under the executive branch, but they had a hard line to the DNI. And the DNI had a hard line to the CIA, to the executive, the president. So now you have one layer of management in between the two. But then you also have this dotted line to the Congress, who controls the purse strings. So prior to that, CIA was controlled exclusively by a black budget. They spend what they want to spend when they want to spend it. Well, now their budget's tied to Congress, black or not.
Do you like that? Do you think there needs to be a department that nobody knows about, especially when we're dealing with the types of actors in the world today, that if they're going to have no rules and they're going to be reckless, we're going to play by the rules, we're going to get our asses handed to us?
And that's my concern, man. I look at this situation, and it's kind of fucked both ways. If you take away oversight to CIA, you run the risk of a politicized, weaponized CIA doing whatever the hell it wants to do. And that goes for anybody else. That goes for IRS for all we care, right? But if you give increasing permissions and oversight to CIA to be more activist, more risk tolerant, then you kind of invite more pain, more public damage, more loss of reputation in the international space. So it's a hard place to be right now, but you're asking the right questions. We, the American people, should be asking these questions. Right now, we're outsourcing these questions to whoever sits in Congress.
Yeah, I don't trust that. So the recklessness, you said after 60s. So are you saying, were we still reckless in the 90s?
We were still without supervision in the 90s, which is a big part of why you started to see, like the Hutus and Tutsis took over. So the 9/11 event that took place, whether we were more reckless or not, that couldn't have been prevented, is what you're saying. 100% could have been prevented.
If what?
If there would have been, this is the argument in the 9/11 Commission, if CIA and FBI would have been forced to work together, 9/11 would have been avoided. And they say that because when in retrospect, they collected all of the intelligence in both agencies and looked at it from 2001 to 2003, they saw that the fulsome profile of both intelligence collection efforts would have prevented the time, the place, and the personas involved. But because FBI was sending messages to CIA, CIA was ignoring them. CIA was sending messages to FBI, FBI was ignoring them. They're using two different systems. They're speaking in different languages. They have different encryptions for the same sources. All of this chaos resulted in the most important stuff just sitting in the printer.
Did we communicate better in the 50s and 60s, CIA and FBI, versus in the 90s?
No, but they had a greater chasm between responsibilities. So inside United States, FBI, outside the United States, CIA. Law enforcement, FBI, or foreign intelligence, CIA. Sabotage, CIA. Drug research, drug investigation, CIA. It started to get kind of conflagrated, I think the word is, confused in the 90s and into the early 2000s.
Yeah, so this I don't know. The level of recklessness of Israel till today, who holds them accountable? What is their level of recklessness they can go to, where a commission comes in and say, tribunal, hey, listen, time out. What are we doing here? Is there anybody that holds all the intel agencies worldwide accountable, or there's really?
That was what they hoped would come about from the UN, that there would be some kind of global organization that we would all voluntarily submit ourselves to, and then we would follow that rule. It was actually Clinton who refused to let the United States fall under the jurisdiction of the UN's court, the criminal court. So after he set that precedent, Israel followed, China followed, Russia followed, and that's why we find ourselves where we are now, where basically anything goes if you're a strong enough, brave enough leader.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I wouldn't want to be under UN because I don't even trust UN. UN's going to be having favorites. So no matter what it is, bias is there no matter who you are. To believe that a person is going to be 100%. Walter Cronkite was the most unbiased. Stop it. He was a liberal. He still had his own bias, right? All of us have it. So it's the sooner I know what your biases are and what mine are, the sooner I'm like, yeah, I totally get it. We were talking about, 3 years ago about you coming here doing something. You remember that conversation we had? My biggest thing was you had a timeline. And then, okay, we do the show, we grow it, it gets millions of subscribers, and then somebody has to come after you. Ain't nobody going to be able to want to hear anybody else but you. I'm like, no, that's not. I'm not. You go do your thing. We had that conversation, and I've recommended you to God knows how many people because I think you're phenomenal at what you do. But everybody has a bias. Spouse, husband, wife, kids, everybody has some of it. And then you have the character and the trust. But going back to this, I'm kind of glad we're not under the UN jurisdiction.
And that's what kills us, right?
Would you want to do that?
No. Personally, it makes complete sense. But what happens is when you look at what's happening in the headlines, and then you put mass opinion on top of what's happening, that mass opinion sometimes drones out the other more rational thought process, right? So you've got all these people who are like, oh, America committed war crimes invading Afghanistan and Iraq. According to war crime legal
definition,
yeah, we did. All war is illegal according to the war definition. That doesn't stop wars from happening. So who are you going to be? The one that gets invaded or the one that does the invading? I mean, if you kind of look at it as a binary personal decision, it makes total sense. But our enemies and our own internal politics have made it so that people start to think that somehow a more cooperative world is better for us. When that is a problem that only the richest, wealthiest, healthiest people get to have. Because when you're not the richest, the wealthiest, and the healthiest, you don't want to be.
Of course.
Yeah, you don't.
They want it, right? They want
Exactly.
it because the more order, the less chance somebody's going to take them out, right?
Correct.
You want that order to be in place, but sometimes you need chaos to be able to move up as well, right? If you don't have the bit of the chaotic situation, how do I come up as a small market? Nowadays, more than ever, the brand you wear reflects and represents who you are. So for us, if you wear a Future Looks Bright hat or a Valuetainment gear, you're telling the world, I'm optimistic. I'm excited about what's going to be happening, but you're a free thinker. You question things. You like debate. And by the way, last year, 120,000 people got a piece of Future Looks Bright gear with Valuetainment. We have so many new things. The cufflinks are here. New Future Looks Bright. This is my favorite, the green one. Just yesterday, somebody placed an order for 100 of these. If you watch the PBD podcast, you got a bunch to choose from. White ones, black ones. If you smoke cigars and you come to our cigar lounge, we have this high quality lighter cutter and a holder for the cigars. We got sweaters with the Valuetainment logo on it. We got mugs. We got a bunch of different things. But if you believe the future looks bright, if you follow our content and what we represent with Valuetainment, with PBD Podcast, go to vtmerch.com. And by the way, if you order right now, there's going to be a special VT gift inside just for you. So again, go to vtmerch.com, place your order, tell the world that you believe the future looks bright. If you enjoyed this video, you want to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here.